Yo, what's up guys, it's Tensei here, and today I am coming at you with a Yu-Gi-Oh! Speed Duel Battle C box tier list. I decided to make this video since there are still 6 months left until the GX box comes, and I've seen a lot of new interest in the format. So this video tries to kinda help people see what's the meta currently until we get the new set. So for tier 1, I put the actual top tier decks. These are the ones that see the most success and will give you the best chances to win. In rogue tier I put playable decks that top sometimes, but they just aren't quite as good as the top tier decks. And trash tier is basically everything else. Now there are power differences within the trash tier, but I don't think it's really that important, since most of these, they will all just lose most games to anything higher than them, so I felt like it's pointless to make any distinction there. So let's get on with the actual list. I'll just say right now, the trash tier here, these are actually unplayable decks. I don't recommend playing these. Sorry if you like Gearfried, these are really bad. But sure, I mean, play whatever you want, but please don't expect success with these decks. Sorry. Anyway, for the tier 1, we have Moth, XYZ, and, well, some of the inner conflict variants. There are some worse variants, like, I don't know, Fairy Conflict, for example, but these are like the competitive inner conflict variants, either playing just good level 4 stuff and a couple tributes, or maybe a small apprentice magician engine. I'll go over those a little bit further on in the video. Then unions, they are fairly standard. Most union lists have the same engine with maybe a couple of exceptions, like some people run 2Z, some people run 3. And yeah, some staples can change, of course. And then Moth is often like a Dark Moth turbo deck, but can be used in multiple other ways, like a Warrior Moth deck. But I think the Dark Moth deck or something along those lines would be the best option competitively. But it's a 5-card engine plus skill that's actually kind of flexible for even more decks than just like regular Dark Moth decks. And yeah, then for the rogue tier decks, there's TP Warrior and Stall, which both play the Twisted Personality skill. TP Warrior it plays a lot of the same cards as an Inner Conflict Good Stuff deck, but often it does have more warriors, like Command Knight maybe. But yeah, it often has stuff like New Doria as well, and maybe more battle tricks to make the Twisted Personality skill gain counters more. And the TP Stall deck is a little more passive, but it also plays the Twisted Personality. And of course, Zoma the Spirit is huge in both, as it burns and gives you the counters on Twisted Personality. Magnets, well, okay, they can sometimes play Twisted, but they usually play their own Magnet Attraction skill. Magnets are a deck that focus on their field spell to get field presence and bounce opponent's stuff. Then Spellproof Armor relies on the skill that makes machines unaffected by spells and lets you normal summon normal machines with 1 less tribute, making a Life Justice Colossus actually a playable card. Relinquished, there's a couple of different things you can do with Relinquished, either the Relinquished skill, that means you don't have to play the ritual spell, or playing pre-prep, and then usually stuff like Shadow Reborn for a little more explosive plays, but I think those variants are a little more bricky, although yes, they are faster and more explosive. Skull Servants, I don't know, it barely makes this list, partially because of personal bias. It's definitely worst out of the rogue tier decks here, but it does have the Haunted Shrine stuff and a lot of recursion via that, and can sometimes just punch for a lot of damage. Yeah, it's cool. I don't recommend it over any of the other decks mentioned before it here, however. But yeah, let's have a little more of a look on these. So here we have I think this was the last winner box. So it's a Dark Moth deck with the triple Parasite, Paranoid, and double Perfect Ultimate Great Moth, and the skill, of course. which are the basis of any Moth deck. Then you also have triple breaker. So in order to make the Parasite Paranoid equip successful, so you can use the skill and tribute the opponent's monster, you want to use breaker, so your opponent can't Book of Moon or Cosmic Cyclone your Paranoid and you get your effects off. And in case you are really new to speed duels and don't know how this works, Paranoid goes on the opponent's monster as a quick effect, and then the skill tributes any insect, which is fulfilled by a monster equipped with Paranoid. And then you get to summon a Perfect Ultimate Great Moth from your deck, and if you have another in your hand, the Paranoid lets you summon that as well. So it gets rid of a monster and summons two 3500 attack beat sticks, which is a lot against 4k life points. And then this skill also lets you shuffle an insect once per duel from your graveyard into the deck and draw a card, so you have a little more recursion, especially if you have to like discard a Moth due to a Twisted Personality skill. But yeah, Breaker here pops back row and is a beat stick, so your opponent might have to use some of the resources on this, so it's basically in any Moth deck, I'd say. Then a Lava Golem is here, so you can... sometimes your opponents play really passive and try to play like face down monsters against Moth. So Lava Golem is a way to get... it's a +1 basically. You get rid of 2 monsters, but you also give them a face-up monster you can equip Paranoid to, so they can't hide behind face downs. Santa Claus is the same thing. It only gets rid of one monster, which against a bigger field, yes, that's weaker, but that means your opponent can play around Lava Golem by only summoning one, since you might have Santa Claus as well. Then Decoichi. This is in a fewer lists these days. It's just a flip to draw one, so that means you get a little more consistency, and it's a Dark for Allure of Darkness. So just more consistency to make you get Moth faster. Sphere Kribo is here to make you survive until you draw Paranoid, and it's a Dark for Allure of Darkness, so you don't have to discard your entire hand for it. And yeah, Allure of Darkness draw power, draw to banish a dark, there's a bunch of darks here. Really useful. And then Night Beam, back row removal, so your Moth gets out without an interruption. Side decks, or yeah, out unions and stuff. The extra deck doesn't matter here. Then unions. So the deck relies on having to use the union combination skill to fuse your unions from grave, and of course with their own effects on the field. So you just want to draw Hanger as quickly as possible, summon a White Dragon Head equipped with Z, so that's a normal summon with 2100 attack and protection. And then Union Scramble later lets you recur your pieces after they're banished, and do a bigger push on turn 3 or turn 5, 4, whatever. And yeah, lots of staples here, Foolish to get pieces into the grave faster, and Obelisk is kind of a useful card here. So after you use your Scramble, you have 3 monsters on the field to summon Obelisk, which is untargetable, and that's actually a huge problem for a lot of decks. So a lot of Union decks do side the 1 Obelisk, not more since it can get bricky. Yeah, this is a fairly standard list for Unions. Then we have Inner Conflict good stuff. So there's 2 Kaiser Gliders. This is a little unorthodox, but it's a more recent list, so I'll show it anyway. So, and it does show the many of the prominent features. So there's only 2 Kaiser Gliders. A lot of the time there's at least 3 tribute monsters, or monarchs as people like to call them, even though they're not named monarchs. Yeah, we have Breaker and Charging Guy as big normal summons that might be threatening to the opponent. Then some battle tricks to make them beat over bigger stuff like the Unions or Moth. Zone of the Spirit is very common. Nightmare Wheel is not that common in conflict decks, but I mean it works. And yeah, Book of Moon, staple in most decks, to be honest. Spell Counselor is interesting to stop some decks, but it's not too common. And yeah, I'll say it now here that Lost Wind is a 2-off in most extra side decks, because it's just really good against Union, and Union is so popular that it does warrant the 2 of spot in the side deck. And yeah, also an inner conflict list, so this plays actually 4 tributes, but also a higher main deck count. So yeah, I think if you do play higher main deck count, this is a correct number of tributes, but I don't think if you want to play 23 cards, really. Yeah, there's, Jinzo and Hades. This is more of an anti-stall deck, I guess. And well, there is 3 Allure, and like each of the monsters here is dark, so that's pretty good. And yeah, there's actually Waking here, so the extra deck does matter a bit. But yeah, be careful of Waking, so your opponent, you can't just blindly destroy back row if you see this, or even if you don't know it's there, you might have to be careful and consider where you use your back row removal. And yeah, then this is now in the Rogue tier, Twisted Personality Warrior. So as I said, there's a lot of shared cards like Breaker, Gaia, Zoma, Book of Moon, but this time you want to accumulate counters on Twisted Personality skill, and you do that with the Cyclones and Wheels, Zoma, and just battle damage, even battle damage inflicted to you. So the advantage here is that you don't have to play any quote-unquote bricks, like level 6 monsters that need a tribute. So you just get these for free, which is cool, but it's a little less explosive, where inner conflict decks can make a huge push with their skill. And then another twisted deck, so this is the Stego deck, or TP Stall, revolving around a stall loop of like Giant Rat and Zombina and Haunted Shrine. So these give you a lot of walls so you don't die. The problem is that you do need to get both Haunted Shrine and Zombina and the target in rotation, and that might be somewhat of an issue. But overall, if you get going, it's really hard to kill this deck, and overall you just win with burn damage from like Lava Golem and Zombina, Swordswoman, like Zombina reviving Swordswoman, and the Zoma. Yeah. Some of like anti-stall option to draw average to recycle your cards, stuff like that. Then Magnet Warriors, so you play 3 field spell, and often you do play 3 Metaverse, sometimes maybe 2. So this deck lives and dies by the field spell, you just absolutely need to get it. It revives your Magnet Warriors once per turn if you control the Magnet Warrior already, and if your Magnet battles, you get to bounce your, return your opponent's monster to the hand. But yeah, it's weak to back row removal, but if they don't have the back row removal, this deck also survives really well, at least against like battle. Some people play the Valkyrion, some people don't. It might be a little bricky, but it also adds a nice offensive option to the deck. Then there's Spellproof Armor, so the skill lets you normal summon machine monster with 1 less tribute, and machines are unaffected by spells, but if your graveyard gets even 1 non-machine in there, the skill flips face down and you can no longer use it during that duel. So that makes this deck a little less flexible. You have to play only machine monsters, but the Zoma the Spirit is of course an exception. It becomes a monster and a zombie monster, but it never goes to the grave as a zombie, so it survived the Spellproof Armor restriction. Soul Exchange lets you out your opponent's monsters and get your Jinzo out more easily. So this is very good against trap decks, and also blocking spells makes this so that your opponent mostly has to rely on a skill or monsters to out this, and some decks have somewhat of a problem with that. Yeah. Nobleman's Crossout to get rid of defense monsters and flip effects that could counter this deck, and the Core Destroyer destroys any light monster battles, so it's really good against especially unions. Then Relinquished, this is also kind of a pet deck, so it doesn't do really well consistently, but I think it has some really cool tools. So this is not really a kind of relinquished deck I would play, I would use the skill, but this was the most recent topping relinquished deck I could find, and it has its upsides. Definitely I could see why you do play this, but yeah. So the pre-prep gets you your ritual spell and relinquished, and then the skill here lets you special summon one monster from either grave once per duel, so usually you do reserve that for relinquished to get some more recursion if your relinquished dies. The faceless here lets you summon itself if relinquished dies, and if faceless dies you summon relinquished back, but both of these are once per turn. But yeah, you have to run over faceless twice in one turn to get rid of it, unless you have something like DD Crow or Soul Release. But overall, yeah, this is a really annoying deck to get rid of unless... it does have two weaknesses. So Inner Conflict can tribute the relinquished without triggering faceless, and Moth can tribute Paranoid. No, Moth can tribute the faceless, relinquished without triggering faceless, yeah. So those decks being good right now means that Shadow Reborn relinquished might be kinda nice to get your relinquished back after the first push, but you might just die before you get the chance to do that, unfortunately. And finally, Skull Servant. So these are probably the worst deck here, but King can gain up to 5000 attack, and that's just the biggest. If you just like big numbers, this might be the deck for you, but be prepared to maybe lose a little more games than the other decks would let you. You can have some searchability here and anti-grave options with Book of Life, and Creature Swap is really cool. But yeah, this has some neat options, but it's a little slow. Like, you won't get the high attack King of the Skull Servants for a few turns. I like it, but it could be better. But yeah, closing thoughts, I would like to thank Tumi for giving me this tier list, or creating it rather. It has, yeah, as you can see, way more decks here, but these were just, yeah, I don't feel like, well, maybe Gaia could have been, but Gaia kind of sucks as well right now into the better decks, so yeah. You can play some of these other decks here, but they are, in my opinion, inferior to the Rogue and Tier 1 lists here. But yeah, it's been a long video, so if you are still here, you can leave a comment and maybe say if you agree with how I tiered these, or if you want to add some other decks here. But if you like the video, please like the video and subscribe to my channel for more Speed Duel content. I will try to upload more regularly now, and yeah, have a good one. Bye.